Day 15 of the war continues on. All sides are digging in deeper. Israeli side continues to talk about wanting to be a superpower. He's all excited, Benjamin Netanyahu. You have Donald Trump saying that he's going to continue to destroy everything that Iran has if they don't submit to what he wants to do. And you have the Iranian side saying, we will not surrender, we will not lay down, and we will not agree to an end to this until you pay us reparations. All of this shows that each side is digging in its heels and they have no interest in surrendering or submitting to the other side at all, which means this is going to continue on for a long time. Meanwhile, the price of oil continues to pop up there. I believe the last one that it ended on the day at the end of Friday was $101. That's where it ended up right now. And that's where it's going to sit probably until Monday, I think, officially when trading back opens up again. You can count on that number going up, especially with everybody digging in their heels here. Well, what I want to talk about today in this episode right here is to be very clear on where the Iranian side leadership is and what does that tell you about their ability to sustain this war and how long they can take this punishment that they are genuinely getting from the Israelis and the Americans. I think you're going to find out it is not optimistic and is not really good for our side because no matter how many bombs we can bring to bear, there's no evidence that we can do anything to stop them, that's going to cause them to capitulate. Let's first of all start off with Abbas Araghchi, who yesterday was asked kind of where they were about this closing of the Strait of Hormuz and getting it open. And he had an interesting comment. He said, well, it's only closed to some customers.
The Strait of Hormuz is open. It is only closed to the tankers and ships belong to our enemies, to those who are attacking us and their allies. Others are free to pass. Of course, many of them prefer not because of their security concerns. This has nothing to do with us. I can say that the strait is not closed, but it is only closed to American, Israeli, ships and tankers.
Yeah, that's kind of a big only because that's everything that we care about here. And of course, that means anybody that's associated with us. And that also requires, ships of other countries that are not necessarily the United States. That means they have to trust what the Iranians are going to say and that they're not going to be some of the ships that are blown up. And we've seen quite a few ships have blown up in the Strait. Many of them have been blown up. And they're not all just American. Some of them are flagged from other countries. So I'm pretty sure that was an intended message that, yeah, you can pass through, but you have to get specific permission from the IRGC, and they have control. They are demonstrating they have full control of the strait. They will keep it open for themselves. You've seen the reports from the Wall Street Journal that Iran has actually exported more oil in these 14 days than they did prior to the war. That's by itself a really remarkable figure. Now, we'll see if that continues to be the case. It's hard for me to imagine President Trump is going to be okay with that because that's kind of like a poke in the eye and an embarrassment. And I would not be surprised here in the next day or two if he takes military action to start hitting some of the Iranian oil infrastructure. So far, he has avoided doing that because Iran has been very clear, and so far they have done everything that they have claimed they would do. If we start hitting their oil infrastructure, they are going to do likewise in the region, both of the United States and of our allies. And I assure you that our allies are screaming at the White House, don't go down that path. That implies that President Trump will listen to everybody, which is obviously a dicey bet at best. Well, let's give you an idea of where the Iranian side is. Now, you might think, and President Trump wants everybody to think, this was some of the Truth Socials that he mentioned out just last night. In fact, let me pull up. This is one that came out earlier this morning, I think it was earlier this morning, where he said, listen, many countries, especially those that are affected by the Iran's attempted closure of the Strait of Hormuz, will be sending warships in conjunction with the United States of America to keep the strait open and safe. Well, that's weird because you're saying that it's not open and we have to get it that way. But anyway, he continues on. He says, we have already destroyed 100% of Iran's military capacity, but it's easy for them to send a drone or drop a mine or a delivery close range missiles elsewhere in the waterway. But no matter how badly defeated they are, but hopefully China, Russia, Japan, South Korea, and the UK, and others that are affected by this artificial constraint will send ships to the area so that the Hormuz Strait will no longer be a threat by a nation that has been totally decimated. Well, obviously that doesn't make a lot of sense, because if they've been totally decimated, then why are you wanting to send Navy in there? I mean, it's disconnected from reality, which by itself is a concern. But that's what we have to deal with. So we've got to look at where the dynamics are that are at play here. But now let's see how the Iranians are thinking about this. See here, in my view, part of the reason for this is that the Iranians are paying attention to what President Trump does and what he says and what he can't do. President Trump wants to cripple the Iranian side, but they have foreseen this and they have prepared for it for a long time. And so they have their critical infrastructure under the ground to where it is a lot harder to get and probably can sustain this level of damage indefinitely, or probably for many, many months. And more on that in just a second. But when they see him say stuff like he did last night, we did a show yesterday where we showed you that President Trump said he attacked Karg Island and obliterated and destroyed everything, all the military sites on there. And then we showed you the images released by CENTCOM itself, which showed minimal damage, actually really small and paucity of damage. So when the Iranians see him say in these big grandiose terms, and then they see it's just little firecrackers on the ground, and then when they hear him say stuff like this, that Iran has been 100% military capacity knocked out, and they have been decimated, and yet they see they're still fully in control of the Strait of Hormuz, and there's nothing you can do to stop it, then that gives them a lot more confidence. And one of the places that confidence wore out is on one of their senior IRGC generals, General Rezai, who earlier today on Iranian television said this.
بدون خروج آمریکا از خلیج فارس و کنترل تنگی هرمز به دست خود کشورهای منطقه، مخصوصا ما و کشور عمان که دو طرف این تنگه هستیم، امکان نداره امنیت به وجود بیاد. پایان جنگ هم در دست ماست. ما زمانی به پایان جنگ نگاه میکنیم که اولا تمام خساراتمون رو از آمریکا خواهیم گرفت. ثانیاً به یک تضمین 100% باید از آینده برسیم که اون بدون خروج آمریکا از خلیج فارس امکان پذیر نیست. بنابراین شرط دوم خروج آمریکا از خلیج فارس است.
You know we don't have sponsors because we hate to hit you over the head with ads. I don't like them. So show a little love back. Subscribe, like, and send this to somebody you care about. Okay, you see that the Iranian side is putting out maximalist requirements. So they're not acting like somebody who's on their knees. They're not acting like somebody who's just getting blown to bits and that they're fearful that any day that they could fall. They're acting like someone who is very confident with what's going on, almost as though that all of the preparations that they had made and all of their mental capacities and just their culture and Shia Islam of being kind of this martyrdom kind of mentality and being willing to suffer, it's almost as though all those things are playing out as they anticipated. They knew that they were going to get hit with amazing amounts of firepower from the United States and Israel. They knew that there's, with all of that naval power in the region, with all the air power that we flew in, they knew for sure that they were going to get hit and hit hard. And there have been some apocalyptic scenes from Tehran. There have been scenes from other parts of the country. Certainly, their navy has the big surface ships have just been wiped out. A lot of their aircraft that were sitting on tarmacs, of course, virtually every one of those were taken out. Because they don't even have revetted positions or overhead cover. So they knew those were going to happen to get destroyed. And they knew the United States would be focused on that. So what we've seen so far is that the Iranian side has said, okay, this is playing out about like we expected. And they said, we have provided for ourselves resupplies, logistics, an ammunition or production capacity, everything underground. Everything out of reach of the majority of these bombs. Apparently, some of these have been hit, but they apparently have dozens of them throughout the country. And they have calculated, and so far they have been right, that we can't take them all out. We probably don't even know where they all are, nor do we have the capacity, if we did, to have all these bunker busters. Remember, I told you during this, the alleged time to take out the nuclear program in 2025 during the so-called 12-day war, that we went in there and we hit, I think it was Fordo and Isfahan and some of these others where they had this deeply buried capability. And we had Ted Postal on it, and he showed you how it was going to be next to impossible to actually get that with these bunker busters, but we didn't have many of them. We had a very few. Certainly not enough to go and take out dozens of these things underground. And you've seen the videos of them. Some of them are these long, expansive tunnels. And even if you hit one part of it, you only hit one part of it. And that's if you knew where it was. And there are scores. You would need probably dozens of those missiles to take out one complete facility. Iran has prepared for this, and they are aware of this, and things are playing the way they want. So now then you see these maximalist demands. He says, that general there says, the end of this war and the opening of the Strait of Hormuz is in our hands. It is not in the Israeli hands. It is not in the American hands. They have confidence that that's the case. And he's setting us the standards. U.S. withdrawal from the region. Withdrawal. That's about as maximalist as you can get. The idea that Iran could ever have forced us out would have been laughable before. Unfortunately, now it's not so funny because they have a hand on the chokehold of the oil supply of a quarter of it for the world. And that's our allies as well, because everybody's dependent upon that strait that the Iranians control. So even though they're our allies and they're happy to produce oil the way we want and sell it and they want to make money, they can't get it through the strait unless or until the Iranian side says, yes, you can. You can go through. You heard Foreign Minister Araghchi. He says, if you get our permission, you can go through. And then apparently one of the other conditions that wasn't on there is that they said, and if you do business in Chinese currency, even American allies can go through. So that's going to put additional pressure on our side, because I promise you, these countries, Oman, Qatar, UAE, Saudi Arabia, they're all in a chokehold right now. And it's going to, the longer this goes on, there is going to be huge pressure on them in their own countries because of the loss of revenue. And they are going to be sorely tempted. If we cannot militarily force open the strait, I promise you, they will come under pressure to say, okay, we'll do business in the I think it's called the renminbi, the Chinese currency, the yuan. I'm sorry, I think it's the yuan. They'll do it in Chinese currency. And then they'll get there out, because that's the only way they can get out. Because understand that right now, because there's no traffic going through, storage facilities are either full or about to be full throughout the region, and they're going to have to stop production because they got nowhere to put the oil. So if they're not producing and they're not selling any, that means all the revenue has come to a grinding halt. And now then they can't even, now then their own economies are going to be doing serious problems. They can't pay bills. They can't bring stuff in. Other stuff is not coming through as well. Food and other kinds of goods that are needed for these Gulf areas all come in through the strait going into it. That's also stopped in here. So there is a lot of pressure on the Gulf region, on our regional allies, to get this thing over with. And President Trump is in a position, how is he going to get this open? So when the Iranians say, you have to get your bases out or we're not going to open this thing up, it's a real problem. When you see them also say reparations, all the damage that you have done and will keep doing, you've got to pay us for that. So every bomb you keep dropping, that means that price tag is going to go up. That's what they're saying. And then, of course, they want security guarantees. And that's not just the IRGC leader. That's also their new supreme leader, as well as their president, Masoud Pezeshkian. They're saying, yeah, you got to close the bases immediately. President Pezeshkian in his ex-post yesterday said the only way to end this war is recognizing Iran's legitimate rights, payment of reparations, and firm international guarantees against future aggression. So he's looking for international partners, whether that's China, Russia, other regional allies, other partners throughout the world. There's no telling who he may be talking about there, but he's wanting other states to basically guarantee their future, not unlike what Ukraine is trying to seek. I think that might have even been the pattern that they're choosing. Yeah, we want the same thing that he's wanting there. Now, in that case, Ukraine has no leverage. He could want that all day long. Russia doesn't have to give it because they have the position of strength. They can keep going. Ukraine can't. They don't have any leverage. Iran has leverage. That Strait of Hormuz that we have handed to them now makes it nearly impossible for us to have just a military demand. There's some really bad ideas floating out there. There has been a Marine Expeditionary Unit, a MU has been sent to the region. It's I don't know the exact number. I think it's like 2,500 Marines, or at least fighters, that are involved with that. That's not a fraction of enough that you would need to even theoretically come up with an idea to force the thing open militarily. Doesn't matter if you take Karg Island. Doesn't matter if you take any of those islands in the horseshoe of the strait. That's not going to do anything. That's not going to get it open, because that's not what Iran uses to keep it closed. So that's not going to, so you're not going to force it in by, there's no ground invasion. We don't have the forces. We wouldn't have the time. The amount of time it would take, even if you wanted to take that gamble, would be too much. Just seizing some of these islands or a little bit of territory here doesn't get you down the road, because it doesn't get to the operative issue of closing the strait or choking off the IRGC and shutting down the country of Iran. You just can't do it militarily. We've gotten ourselves into this real position to where there's just nowhere to go. And you can see that they're very confident. They think they can do this because they spent months and years and actually decades in some categories preparing for this. That's why those tunnels that Gary has shown you all during the week, it took many, many years to build those, to carve them out, to construct them, to bring in all the equipment, to have the sustainment capability. I mean, I'm talking decades to build some of those things. Well, they have them. And now then they're reaping the benefit of all the effort that they put in there. That's the nature of their confidence, because they calculate that they have the ability, their population, to endure this existential fight to where all these bombs are falling on. They realize that if they give up here, they lose their state and they become a vassal state of the United States. And so they will pay any price to keep that from happening. And of course, people keep dying by the day. There was another attack on the city of Isfahan today where 15 more Iranians were killed. And of course, that goes out there. They realize that this is killing lots of regular people. It's not just against the regime. It's not just against the government that many hate. It's against them. So they have every reason to continue to fight. And the government has prepared for this, and they are equipped. They're stocked full. They have the logistics that they need. They have the manufacturing capacity they need. They can probably go, I would say, at a minimum a year, and I would more likely they can go even longer than that if they need to. They could probably expand out and have a sustained rate of fire with drones and missiles and other kinds of activities, and they can keep that strait shut down. Remember, even if you took some of the surface areas, even if you take Kharg Island, that's not going to do anything to the number of small submarines that they have that can fire torpedoes. It's not going to do anything to these underwater missiles they have. It's like torpedoes. They call them underwater missiles because they can apparently maneuver and they can go very fast. All it takes is just demonstrating with one or two tankers that they can shut it down, and nobody else is going to go against it. So everywhere you want to look, they have the capacity to keep that strait shut until they decide it can go through, and they choose who does and doesn't go through. Well, what is that going to mean now? I mean, look, this is a real dangerous for President Trump, because the U.S. economy is in real hurt. $101 a gallon, 101 barrel for a gallon, a barrel of oil right now is already, it was 67 when this started. So it's already gone up $34. And that's as of today. That's as of now a little over 2 weeks. We'll see what it's going to open up with on Monday. And if this continues to be shut down each week, it's going to continue to tick up. By the end of the month, it could be easily over $120 a barrel, maybe even more. As you start getting the months going there, you start seeing the risk go high. Well, every time that does, that makes the price of gasoline in the United States go higher. Ergo, everything in our economy will also start rising in price. And that will put tremendous political pressure on President Trump. There's going to be pressure from our Gulf allies, who also are losing revenue by the hour, that they're not able to pump oil and they can't even get it up out of the ground, much less sell it. They're going to be putting pressure on President Trump. They're not going to care about this. In fact, they're going to get more and more angry at the United States because we chose this war that didn't need to be fought. They've existed with Iran for 47 years and they've been able to do business. And now, because President Trump chose to have a war, that's why all of this started. It was not necessary. It's very clear to them. So now the question is, what are we going to do next? Midterms coming up. So the pressure on Trump is really, really high right now. And he's got to try to find some way to get this out. Well, he's trying to use a lot of extra firepower. That's not working. He's now saying he can't even go to the path of he's done in the past of just walking away and just saying, well, we're going to declare victory. I destroyed X, Y, and Z. He can't do that because the Iranian side isn't going to let him. They're confident they can keep going with this. And then, of course, you also have the Europeans as well, because their economy is also going to suffer. This is a global commodity, so the price going up and up is going to cause problems for them too. There's also the urea issue, which is also not coming out. Remember, that's something that agriculture needs. This is, in the planting season, farmers all over the world need this stuff. 35% of it comes through the Strait of Hormuz. That's going to put pressure. What is President Trump going to do? Is he going to give in to that? Is he going to walk away from the Middle East? Is he going to suffer a failure like nobody's business? No, I mean, it's not even conceivable that you started a war of choice and then you lost all of our bases. You understand he would be impeached in a minute. Forget about the midterms. Forget about whether the Republicans or the Democrats would hold either the House or the Senate. That wouldn't matter. No politician is going to support something like this. But if he doesn't do that, then the war continues on and these prices stay rising. Now then you're going to get to the position where if the Iranians hold firm and they hold firm with these maximalist objectives and they really are pushing for the withdrawal of the Americans, then you have the real risk that either the United States or Israel could think about resorting to a nuclear weapon. You can see before that the idea would have been preposterous. No one would have given it any serious thought. But because of the conditions I've just laid out, that is a real possibility. I don't know where this is going to go, folks, but I don't see any easy outs for the president. He has dug himself into a hole here that because the Iranians are doing something that I don't think that anybody in the administration expected, stand up to the U.S., and now then they're saying, no, we're set and we have the ability to suffer a lot and we can sustain it for a long period of time. Can you? That's the big gamble right now. If the Iranians stay firm and if they continue to push back on all of our pressure, God help us if we get foolish enough and try a land incursion anywhere, that would just make it even more worse and show the weakness of our side even greater and increase the chances that we get kicked out with no terms of that we like at all. That's the box that we've played ourselves into. Understand, this is a very serious issue. There's so many people in the United States that are still talking about how this is successful. We're going to get them any day now. They're weakened. They're going to fall. Whatever. You can say that all day long, but when you look at the fundamentals, folks, they are not on our side because of the war of choice we made. We are now in an unwinnable situation which could go dark. I pray to God it doesn't. But right now, if the Iranians want to continue to play hardball, we're going to have a problem. We'll stay on top of this, folks. If anything happens over the weekend, you can count on us right here. We will see you then on the next episode of the Daniel Davis Deep Dive.